Today we are making borscht. So I'm going to start by browning some beef bones. I have some ribs and some shank bone there. I have about 4 pounds. You can totally make the soup vegetarian and skip this step. You don't need a stock. You can just do it on water. I've done it and it's delicious, but I'm going to make mine with some meat today. So I'm going to brown it in my pan here, and then I'm going to cover it with water and add a whole onion and cook it for about an hour. Okay guys, so I browned the meat and now I covered it with some water, more than covered it. You want to add more liquid than you think because some of it is going to boil out and your amount of liquid is going to reduce as you cook the stock. And I've added 2 small onions. If I had a larger one I would add 1 large one. And I have about 5 celery stalks, not too big in there. Celery's not traditional, but I figure you get out what you put in, and I think celery will give the stock a little bit more flavor. You're going to take it out once the stock is done cooking, so no need to cut it up small. So I'm going to let this cook for about an hour. I'm also going to add a little bit of salt right now, but not too much. I'll do more seasoning at the end. I also want to mention that you don't want it to boil too hard, you just want it to simmer. And also you're going to get some foam on the top, so just use a skimmer to remove the foam. So while your stock cooks, you can do the rest of your vegetables. Here I have shredded about 1 pound of beets. I could have used more, but unfortunately I got the last of the beets from the store. So you can either shred them on a box grater on the large side, or you could cut them up into like juliennes, but I figured I'd make it easier for you guys. So you want to have a little bit of oil, just enough so that it doesn't stick to your pan. You want to warm it up, and then you're going to throw your beets in. And you're going to saute them, and I'm going to add a little bit of vinegar. I'll show you that in a second. You just want to add a little bit of vinegar. I have probably about 2 tablespoons, maybe 1.5 tablespoons of white vinegar. Alternatively, you could use some lemon juice, but it's very important. It helps the beets keep their beautiful color. And I'm just going to cook this for a few minutes. You don't have to cook it all the way through because it'll keep cooking in the soup a little bit later. You just want to add a little bit of vinegar. I have probably about 2 tablespoons, maybe 1.5 tablespoons of white vinegar. Alternatively, you could use some lemon juice, but it's very important. It helps the beets keep their beautiful color. And I'm just going to cook this for a few minutes. You don't have to cook it all the way through because it'll keep cooking in the soup a little bit later. So once your stock is done cooking, you want to remove the meat and the celery and the onions, and you're going to pick the meat off the bones and throw away all the fat and all of that. And you'll put it back into the soup later. And now I'm going to add, I have about 4 Yukon Gold potatoes, large potatoes that I cut up into cubes. And what I like to do is add it with a little bit of cold water to cool down the stock, because if you add the potatoes to the hot stock, they won't cook, they won't get very tender. They'll cook through, but they'll have like a little hard shell on the outside. So I'm going to add that to the stock, and then I'll show you the next step. So you're going to cook your potatoes in the stock, and in the meantime I have my skillet heating with a little bit of oil, vegetable oil. Sorry about the glare. And I'm going to add 1 large onion that I chopped up. I'm going to lower the flame. And when it starts to get a golden color, I'll add some more ingredients. What I have here is 1 red bell pepper that I chopped up, and I have 4 carrots that I shredded, and 1 large parsnip. Now, for the root vegetables, the carrot and the parsnip, you could also cut it into julienne pieces if that's what you did with your beets, or you could just shred them like I did. And I'm going to add that to the onion once it's a little bit more brown. So you see that we have a little bit of this browning going on the onion, and I'm going to add the rest of those vegetables in here now. And I'm going to cook this for a few more minutes, just until they soften and start to get a little bit of color maybe. So now that our vegetables have softened and started to get a little color, I'm going to add some tomato paste, and that's probably 3 tablespoons. I'm just going to get it out off camera because I'm shaking it, but you can add as much or as little as you want. You can use fresh tomatoes. You could use a little ketchup if you want. If you have a small jar of tomato paste, you could use the whole thing. It's up to you. So I've mixed in my tomato paste, and I'm going to cook it probably for less than a minute, just a little bit. And then you'll turn it off and you'll add it to your soup a little bit later on. I'll show you when. So once your potatoes have been cooking for about 10-15 minutes, you're going to add some cabbage. Now I shredded about 3/4 of a head of cabbage. You could do the whole head, half a head, depending how much soup you're making, how thick you want it, how much cabbage you want. I didn't feel like using up the whole head. I thought it would be too much. So I'm going to add this into the soup, and then I'll show you the next step. Now at this point, I think I'm going to add my salt now. I might not overdo it, like go lightly on it, maybe add a little bit more later, but I think I'd like to add it now because I want my potatoes and cabbage to have the salt in there. And this vegetable mixture that we just cooked, you can add it later, but I think I'm going to add it now. I'd like it to have a little more time to cook in the broth. And we're going to cook this for about 15-20 minutes until the cabbage is almost ready. So I added my carrot and parsnip and pepper mixture with the tomato paste in here, and I gave it a taste after I added some salt. And I decided to add some ketchup. I like the flavor. Some people would never dream of doing that. It's up to you if you like the flavor of ketchup. I find that it gives a little sweetness and tanginess, kind of a sweetness that you can't really get from adding sugar. And I'm probably not going to add sugar at the end. A lot of people add a little bit of sugar. But borscht is supposed to taste a little bit sweet, a little bit sour. So I like the ketchup in here. So I added a little bit. You can do that to taste. It's up to you. Now I'm going to let it cook for a little while longer, and then I'll show you the next step. When your potatoes are almost cooked through, you're going to add your beets that you cooked previously. And you're going to put your meat back into the soup. And then you're going to cook it until the potatoes are completely cooked. Once your potatoes are fully cooked, you're going to finish your borscht with some herbs. I have dill and parsley, and I crushed some garlic. I probably have about 6 cloves of garlic there, but you can always do garlic to taste. I like a lot of it. And you're just going to mix it in and bring it back up to a boil for a second and then turn it off. Before you turn it off, I just want to make sure that I didn't mention black pepper. You can add black pepper at this point to taste. If you feel that it needs sugar, you can add a little sugar. Just taste it, make sure you like how it tastes. So to serve your borscht, you just want to save a little bit of your dill and parsley and sprinkle on top, and you absolutely need a dollop of sour cream, traditionally. I hope you enjoy.